In 2003, Sega underwent a corporate restructure, consolidating its 9 main studios down into 6. This restructure eventually turned Amusement Vision, the studio that created and perfected Super Monkey Ball, into Sega NE R&D. That studio went on to develop Yakuza for the PS2, leaving Ai and the other monkeys without a home. This resulted in an odd transitional period between 2005 and 2006, when a trilogy of strange games were released, before the franchise eventually found a new identity. The last time we talked about Super Monkey Ball, we went over the first of these, Super Monkey Ball Deluxe, a compilation of the first 2 games for PS2 and Xbox with an incredibly foggy development history. Today, we'll be talking about the second, Super Monkey Ball Touch and Roll for the Nintendo DS. According to IGN, Touch and Roll was first revealed in an issue of the Japanese magazine Famitsu around September 2005, only 6 months after Deluxe's release in America and Japan, and only 3 months before the game's Japanese launch. Information on its development, similar to Deluxe, is quite sparse. I could only find one interview where the game is discussed, with series creator Toshihiro Nagoshi. At this point in his career, he'd been mid-transformation, from lovable goofball who makes games about monkeys and balls, to card-carrying member of the Yakuza, so more time is devoted to discussing that first Yakuza title and some other games than Touch and Roll, unfortunately. There are a few interesting tidbits in here though, like he refers to the game as Touch and Go, which could either be a mistranslation or an early title. The Japanese name of the game is just Super Monkey Ball DS, but it could also be possible they didn't want to infringe upon Yoshi's territory. The jury's out. He also alludes to the possibility of online play, saying they're not certain if it will be included yet, but that local multiplayer is in. The game doesn't have online play. Unlike Super Monkey Ball Deluxe, we do at least know for sure who worked on this, courtesy of the fun but way too slow credits minigame. Nagoshi serves as producer and director, with the rest of the staff mostly consisting of Monkey Ball veterans. Not everyone who worked on the first 2 games returns, but almost everyone behind Touch and Roll did play a part in those early titles, with the 2 newcomers being Kenta Tsukiji-shin, who worked on this as an assistant designer before working on a Dragon Ball Z game and seemingly dipping from the industry, and Shiho Kobayashi, a former employee of Hitmaker, another Sega studio lost to the restructure. She worked as sound producer and director on the Virtua Tennis games and provides the music here. Okay, so we actually have a pretty reliable crew of Sega veterans, mostly from Amusement Vision. My expectations actually exist now. Let's see what they do with this. We open in true Monkey Ball fashion, with Ai shaking his ass and telling us to touch him.
John, what are you doing down there?
Nothing! The game doesn't appear to have a story, putting it in the same category as the last few portable installments of this series. Good company. We're just going through mazes, putting our lives in danger for seemingly no reason. Who built these then? Are they naturally occurring? Did the bird on the main menu have something to do with it? I don't trust those eyes. We have the classic challenge and practice modes here as usual, home to 12 worlds with 10 stages apiece. This is set up a little bit more like Monkey Ball 2's story mode, rather than the traditional beginner, advanced, expert structure of the previous challenge modes. Although, instead of going through the worlds in a sequential order, you basically just pick whichever one you want from the map on the touchscreen. You start out with only the first world, and you unlock more as you beat them, but I didn't know this when I wrote the rest of the review, because I bought a used copy of the game that already had all the worlds unlocked, and to my knowledge, there's no way to delete save data in Super Monkey Ball Touch and Roll. So if you get this game secondhand, which you probably will if you're buying it now, just be mindful of that. I suppose the closest you get to beating the game is individually conquering every world, but it doesn't seem like you get anything special for doing so. Each world has its own theme, and while there might not be any malls or washing machines to be seen here, I do think that most of them set themselves apart well enough. The levels are about half original, with the other half being reused, mostly from Super Monkey Ball 1 with a pinch of Monkey Ball 2 for flavor. The remakes aren't all 100% faithful, and some of the new levels seem a little similar to older ones, so take my pie chart with a grain of salt. It is a little unfortunate we're treading so much familiar ground again, since we just talked about Deluxe and the last 2 handheld titles, which were also pretty derivative of the first console game, but I do think we have a nice set of levels here. I actually want to commend them for doing so many new ones. I think they help to give the game its own identity, even though I would have loved to have seen more. I am getting a little ahead of myself though. Touch and Roll's controls are interesting to me because they arguably emulate the console game's analog control less accurately than something like Monkey Ball Jr., and yet, to my pathetically casual hands, it feels pretty natural most of the time. In Junior, the D-pad moves you, and if you hold down the face buttons, you can speed up or slow down. In Touch and Roll, it's pure D-pad, nothing else. else. And somehow that usually works. Don't get me wrong, in some more precise areas like beginner stage 2, hollow diamond shortcut, it can get to be kind of annoying. But on the whole, the game feels more fluid than you would imagine. But if the feeling of your fingers against the D-pad just can't produce the same exhilarating rush within you as an analog stick, remember that this game is on the DS. It's touch and roll, baby. Grab that stylus and move your monkey with a full 360 degrees of motion. It took me a long time to figure out how this worked, and I was close to writing it off entirely, but I gave it one more chance in preparation for this video, and it actually feels way better than it has any right to. Funnily enough, after talking to Ninja Star Compass about it a bit, I've come to the conclusion that both control schemes actually fill in for each other's weaknesses. Using the D-pad feels good for levels that are slower paced and might require some more precise turns, while using the touchscreen feels good for levels that require more precise momentum, whether that be a sudden shift or a need to go as fast as Ai's little feet can muster. It's almost remarkable how well these work with the existing levels. I genuinely smiled with childlike delight when I managed to get the skip from Hollow, the epicenter, to work, just like in Monkey Ball 2. I find that part of the fun of the game is actually figuring out which control scheme is the most optimal for which circumstance, and even switching between them on the fly. That's going in the video. Let's keep going, let's do it, let's go. Woo! Woo! Okay, where were we, actually? A good example is Parasite, because it's incredibly fun and easy to use the touchscreen for most of it, zipping down this tube at blistering speed, before switching to the D-pad to make sure you can navigate the thinner stretch of land at the very end. It actually sort of adds another layer to Monkey Ball's trademark problem solving that I genuinely appreciate. There is one problem though. You can't move the camera. That might sound weird. I mean, after all, you never could. And while it might have been a minor annoyance in the GameCube games, it never seriously hindered your progress, right? Boom, rotary bypass. Look at this. Look at this! I'm nauseous. You got these platforms moving in a circular motion and you have to wait for them to line up to cross. Simple enough, classic Monkey Ball idea, but the verticality really does not work with the camera here. I don't think I've ever wanted the DS to have an analog stick or a second D-pad before, but this level's definitely making me reconsider. Oh god, could you imagine camera movements with a second D-pad? Scratch that idea. Maybe what we needed was a second touchscreen. The Nintendo TS. Hire me. I guess this does make what would otherwise be pretty standard Monkey Ball fare into a genuinely challenging level. It turns the game into a one-on-one fight, you against the camera, oscillating wildly between an overhead view and a side one. Of course, the only way to move the camera is by moving your character, so the game coaxes you ever so slightly to the right, just enough to get a wider perspective, which inevitably results in Mimi's untimely demise. I still managed to clear it after a good while though. A quick one and done. Until the level Revolution, which is basically rotary bypass but harder. Touch and Roll's levels, both new and returning, are all clearly designed with the limitations of these control schemes in mind. So, even if the lack of a camera makes some levels harder than they need to be, you rarely ever run across a moment that feels unfair due to the shift in platform. Speaking of the new levels, they actually fit in really nicely with the older ones. Some even got my brain working in the same way as the OG games. Betting Course gave me a run for my money. You see what I did there? Giving me several game overs before I managed to trial and error my way through it with the same satisfaction that the console games gave me at their best. Unlike Deluxe's new levels, these ones also make use of unique set pieces, like Betting Course's rollers or the millipede in Millipede. While Touch and Roll can sometimes feel like a retread due to the amount of recycled content, these help make it feel like the Monkey Ball formula is moving forward somewhat instead of completely stagnating. A couple of minor things have been tweaked from the prior games. There are no continues, it now takes 10 bananas to get an extra life instead of 100, and, as I previously mentioned, the levels are divided up into sets of 10 rather than 3 sets of 10, 30, and 50. These changes are all presumably to make the game a better fit for a handheld like the DS. You can grind out some Monkey Ball on your morning commute and actually have a chance of finishing something before you go in for a hard day of work. Originally, I thought that these changes were to make the game easier, and while I do think it makes it a bit more of a casual experience, the inclusion of Monkey Ball 2's infamous reversible gear, now called Starfish, made me realize that the devs did not at all care about making an easier game. Fun fact, I remember playing this game for the first time in the car with my friend Sam, driving home after buying it, and I actually yelled "No!" upon seeing this ungodly levels return. A real "why did they include this" type moment. A rare poor judgment on the part of the Touch and Roll devs. After completing each world, we get to play a credits minigame, as is Monkey Ball tradition at this point. This one's pretty fun. You hang out in the night sky, using your touchscreen to flick monkeys up into the letters. If you can keep your monkey from falling, the rest of them will gradually join in, so you can achieve maximum efficiency. Each letter you hit will net you some bananas. The more monkeys you have, the easier it is to hit all the letters, but the harder it becomes to actually maintain all of them, so it turns into kind of a fun little balancing act thing. Only one small problem though. There's no way to skip this one. And it lasts a long time, like close to 5 full minutes. I almost always start off having fun, realize I'm bad at the game, keep going, then get bored and turn the console off. This is sort of antithetical to the whole streamlined handheld approach the game otherwise goes for, and it's a baffling decision considering you've always been able to skip the credits in the console games, which I would often do by accident. I'm actually just letting this run in the background as I write this. Gongon's just hovering there, waiting. This game's roster should look familiar, with our 4 favorite monkeys still present and accounted for, but they look a little different than they did back on the GameCube. The whole game sports a very unique art style, stylized presumably so it can perform well on a weaker platform like the DS. This attempt is mostly successful, with the game playing buttery smooth, the only exception I noticed being laggy victory animations on a few stages. There are 2 unused 3D models of II in the game's files, those being wonderfully low poly renditions of his original design and the design that eventually ended up in the game. Somewhere along the line, Sega changed their mind though, because the final game renders the monkeys as 2D sprites over the game's 3D world. These small sprites on the top screen are accompanied by big, expressive ones on the bottom screen. The new designs for the monkeys bear more than a slight resemblance to the way they would eventually look in Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz, which came out later the same year. But I think this game's unique art style gives them their own look. They're very clean looking, with big, thick outlines and solid colors, making them a good match for the game's simplistic geometry and bright color palette. Fun fact, Mimi's design from this game's box art was actually the first profile picture for this very YouTube channel. It was synonymous with the John identity. Back when I thought I was just gonna be the Monkey Ball guy and I was too cheap to commission channel art. I still adore all the 2D art I can find for this game, both the sprites and the incredibly sparse amount of promo art, most of which seems to be stuck in the game's black and white instruction manual. It all looks great, even monochromatically. The earlier Monkey Ball games are products of their time in terms of aesthetic, having a distinct Y2K flair, and Touch and Roll carries that trend forward, having a distinct mid-2000s energy. And speaking of distinctive mid-2000s energy, can we talk about this gloriously low poly 3D for a second? Good God in heaven, look at these stages! These are like aggressively early DS vibes. I think limited 3D informed by hardware constraints might be a favorite aesthetic of mine.
God, I charm the love the limited 3D game God use in this charm, it's so gaming.
I think that my brainstem just collapsed.
Look at this! I could live here. A lot of the skyboxes in this game look like liminal spaces. They get across the same idea as the console versions in a lot of cases, but like, what the hell are these mountains? This Sonic Adventure 2 look-at-ass jungle? This endless waterfall? It's immaculate. The actual platforms your monkey balls on have a different sort of look to them though, sort of doing a checkerboard pattern. The bright color combos give me sort of a neon-lit casino kind of vibe, especially with the simplified light up goal. Each world has its own color scheme going on, from the ice cube looking floors of Ice Lollyland to the ominous orange volcanoes of Parlarver Lava? Is that what that's called, actually, really? To the ominous orange volcanoes of Parlarver Lava. The bright colors and simple geometry make Touch and Roll look a lot more gamey than its realistic console counterparts. I mean, as realistic as floating malls and giant washing machines are. You know? The music, courtesy of Chiho Kobayashi, also feels a bit more playful than the GameCube games. It still sounds more Monkey Ball-esque than her previous work on Sega's Virtua Tennis games, but it has a bit more of an almost cartoonish edge to it. They even put like a Hanna-Barbera sound effect on the title screen as the first thing you hear. I wish these carried over to the rest of the game. It feels more melody focused too. Listen to this pretty little descending bit on the title screen. Mwah. There are places where it almost sounds like I'm playing a Yoshi game, which is not a bad thing. I'd say Touch and Roll's music still has that distinctive Monkey Ball bounce, but the more whimsical edge coupled with the DS's distinctive sound font definitely feels like we've gone from the most early 2000s shit I've ever heard in my life to the most mid-2000s shit I've ever heard in my life. It sounds less concerned with being futuristic and hip and more concerned with having a good time, taking advantage of all the vibes that entails. The voice clips are, bizarrely, taken from the GameCube games and sped up. Not sure why. Did they do this to make the monkey sound more cute and marketable? It's a little jarring, to be honest. Mimi sounds like an annoying little baby now. It seems like most of the other sound effects are also recycled, though there is no longer an announcer of any kind. How am I supposed to know what any of these things say now? I can't read! The 6 party games here put full emphasis on the touchscreen, with the D-pad reserved for minor things like using items. Oh look, Monkey Race, that's here. Woo! Yay. You move the monkey with your stylus, while each direction on the D-pad allows you to use an item, so you can hold 4 at a time. There are 4 levels, and while some are sort of similar to courses from 1 and 2, with Sandy Highway more or less being a direct rip, these are mostly original. I like the dark, gaping void that serves as the background of Galaxy Way, because it's a perfect representation of what I feel when I play Monkey Race. Listen, you know me. I don't like Monkey Race much on the best of days. The last thing I need is Monkey Race as played on a touchscreen. I mean, it doesn't feel that much worse than the regular Monkey Race, but that's because it's Monkey Race! It felt like trash to begin with. That Galaxy Way level and its sharp turns and elevation shifts really tested my patience especially. You can play these levels one at a time in Time Attack or all at once in Grand Prix. By the time I reached this course, the last one I might add, I was somewhere between bored and frustrated. Even the music sucks somehow. What is this even supposed to be? Get this out of here. Oh boy, it's Monkey Fight! With stylus movement and shoulder button punching? The courses are basically recycled from Monkey Ball 1. Not a fan of the elementary gym class equipment colors they've added to the ice level, but oh well. Hey, the UFO level takes place in the void too. You can charge up your fist like the second game and it grows like spikes. It also spins for some reason, like the spin power up, which is kind of useless because you just get knocked around before you can do the charge spin anyway. As much as I like the chaotic nature of Monkey Fight, I kind of feel like this version is too frenzied. Like, look at how much the camera moves around. Where am I? It almost feels like the AI is more aggro than usual on top of that, which is saying a lot. It's not like bad though, I guess. I like the visuals, the little countdown at the beginning is charming. The victory animations are kind of crusty though, because they're still using the sprites, so the monkeys just snap upward. And you still can't hit the damn camera! Why'd they ruin the game? Monkey Bowling has also returned, and it's still pretty okay, I guess. You throw your monkey with the stylus. The harder you flick, the faster you go. You can still put a tilt on your ball, also with the stylus, but you can only do this before you throw, which is especially egregious here because a quick flick of the stylus often leads to an off-center monkey. Your monkeys are very picky too. I swear I hit 8 pins with the opportunity for a spare and Mimi was still pouting at me as though I fell off the lane entirely. She demands perfection. The D-pad changes the camera angle if you need more visibility, which does help a little. It also helps with admiring how beautiful the low-poly recreation of Monkey Ball 1's bowling environment is. I could live here too. There's also a challenge mode with 3 levels.
Who's this koala coach character? He's so cute.
You have to clear all of these different configurations of pins in one shot each. In level 1, there are 10, and you get 15 lives, so essentially 5 chances to mess up. Only the first level is unlocked by default, and presumably you'd unlock the other 2 by clearing the first one. I've got a level with you guys. I suck at this. You guys understand? Please understand. Please. Our last returning minigame is Monkey Mini Golf, which I'm glad they picked over that disgusting macro golf game from Monkey Ball 2. You, of course, swing your club with the stylus here, which actually works as well as a traditional controller would. Most of the actual 18 holes featured here are unique, but a lot of the ideas come from the ones present in the GameCube game. Everything sort of feels like a more streamlined, concise version of those. This is definitely the best veteran minigame. It doesn't feel compromised at all, really. It's relaxing to play this in the background while watching a stream.
Jiggly Raccoon boobs? What?
John,
Shit. I could imagine it would also be relaxing to play on like a train or something. The exceptionally pleasing nighttime background paired with the DS quality fireworks and windmill are the cherry on top. Touch and Roll also introduces 2 new party games, with the first being Monkey Hockey. This is basically an air hockey game, which can be played in singles or doubles. Classic air hockey is featured here, but we also have Line Smasher, where you, the player, draw your own... What are the things you hit with in air hockey? Wikipedia says mallet? You can draw your own mallet. I really like to try making mine as janky as possible. Like, yeah, I could just draw a long line, but I prefer my mallets a little more oblong. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Funnily enough, your opponent can whittle down your line if they hit it on the sides, but drawing it at an angle makes that harder, so there's a tip for the meta. If you land the puck in one of these little circles, you can also trigger a variety of effects, like widening your opponent's goal or making their non-line smasher mallet smaller. This one is tailor-made for the DS, and the touchscreen control feels great. It's a natural fit. It's sort of a weird fit with the other party games, though. Monkey Ball party games traditionally take advantage of the whole monkey in a ball concept, like, oh, it's golf, so the golf ball is the monkey? I mean, sure, like Monkey Boat doesn't, but did you remember that Monkey Boat existed before I just brought it up? That's what I thought. You don't even see the monkeys in this one except when someone scores a goal. It's funny, especially if you're playing doubles. You have to pick all 4 characters and then they're just barely there. No alternate palettes like on GameCube. Another sort of oddity is that you can pick if you or the opponent serves before each round, but only one person gets to for the entire duration of that round. Like, you can serve for every shot or your opponent can, but you can't alternate. Just weird. Either way, this is one of the better ones. I had a lot of fun with it. Finally, we have the first-person shooter. Monkey Wars. Your monkey is thrown into the trenches and your goal is to put down the other monkeys with your funny laser guns until they flicker out of existence. You have 3 maps to choose from, with maps on the top screen and action on the bottom. The movement is genuinely really fun and intuitive. It actually sort of emulates a usual shooter's dual analog setup, with the D-pad moving your character and the bottom half of the touchscreen allowing you to turn them. You do this little camera nonsense by touching this bottom bar, but if you touch anywhere else on the touchscreen, you can shoot. The turning is impressively fluid, with quick swipes being responsive and snappy, allowing for the type of immediate movement a shooter needs. I really like the item selection here too. Some of them act like usual shooter weapons, like machine guns or grenades, while others are sort of Mario Kart-ish, slowing you down or obscuring your screen. They're all themed around food, which I think is super appropriate. I mean, you're a monkey in a jungle. It makes sense that you'd panic in the heat of battle and use things like watermelon seeds or pineapples. I don't know where they're getting cream pies or popcorn from, though. Does II even own a microwave? Maybe he likes to unwind on the weekends by cooking up some Jiffy Pop over the fire? I'm not even gonna ask about the pie. It implies that the monkeys know how to bake, and like, listen, I can buy monkeys rolling in balls over floating platforms. I can deal with one of them being a time-traveling baby. But monkeys knowing how to cook? My suspension of disbelief is in pieces on the floor. We need to move on. All the party games also have multiplayer. If each baller has their own stylus, the whole selection along with all of the options they entail are right at your stylus tips. The host is called the boss, and everyone else is called a lackey, a lowly peasant. You can also have one person with a cartridge host while the other players join via DS download play, but you'll only get to play Monkey Race, Hockey, and Wars, all with a pre-selected level and options. No such luck with multiplayer for the main game, but what are you gonna do? I can barely stay awake when I play the credits minigame myself. I don't need to watch somebody else play it. Super Monkey Ball Touch and Roll is a surprisingly well-developed and robust package. While Monkey Ball's previous handheld outings have attempted to capture the feeling of the console games, almost to a fault, Touch and Roll is much more content with its own identity. Pretty ironic given the amount of recycled material here, but hey, a good aesthetic and an intuitive control scheme built for the hardware goes a long way. And hey, if you want to try out Touch and Roll, but you just can't get past the idea of playing Monkey Ball with a D-pad and a stylus, a ROM hacker by the name of Crime Hacks is currently working on porting the game's levels into Monkey Ball 2, liminal skyboxes and all. But even if you're still rocking your old DS Lite like I am, I'd say it's worth a try. While I love Touch and Roll, it still feels like we're a little stuck, doesn't it? I mean, after all, the game before this was essentially a compilation, and now we're reusing a bunch of those levels again? I think it's time for Monkey Ball to take a step forward, like a big step forward. Sure, the series has had the occasional hiccup here and there, but we've had a pretty good track record so far. I'm sure II and his buddies could knock something new and experimental out of the park, right? 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 Hey everyone, thanks for watching my video on Super Monkey Ball Touch and Roll for the Nintendo DS. Special thanks to the Ariona for a vocal cameo, Ninja Star Compass for capturing additional footage of the game on his DS capture card, which I sprinkled in along with my own emulator footage, and Cardno for providing me a little bit of footage of Banana Blitz. I'll link all their stuff in the description, so please go check them out. Special thanks also to my patrons. You can see all of them on the screen right now, but for $3 or more, I read their names out loud. Like, for example, Bowties and Glasses, Bam Bam Dabuha, Angel Thing, Jenny, Anna Picard, Archagent Everlasting, Cowboys in the Hood, Dorochi, Devnal, Don Rouse, Drawn by AJ, etc., Ice Crash Radio, Inutsu, Jakey97, Mass Rivers, Mustache Duct Tape, Pack Jeff, Pigpen, Rams, and Tanner McGuire. See you all in the next one.